Hi, everyone. Welcome back to National Park After Dark. We're so excited to have you here for our trail tales.
We are. And we hope you enjoyed Monday's episode with Randy Minotaur. She's the author of the Death in series. If you didn't catch that, like Death in Glacier, Death in Acadia, she's done a Rocky Mountain one. She's done a bunch of them. We found out she wrote over 90 books, which is a little wild. But yeah, so on the book topic, we have some fun news. We finally did it.
We did. We finally did it, and we have created a National Park After Dark book club, which has been highly requested for, I want to say, like 2-ish years now. It's
Mhm.
been like a while that people have been asking for it, but we finally created it. It's on Patreon. You can find our Patreon in our links. You can find it on our website. If you go on Patreon, just type in National Park After Dark podcast and we'll pop right up there and check it out. It's available on 2 of our tiers that we offer.
Yeah, so we picked our book for this month, and each month we're going to choose a book. We just picked one that we really wanted to read for our first one, but for the next, however many months, we end up doing this,
Mhm.
which is hopefully forever because we love to read. Um,
Mhm.
we're going to have like votes. We'll pick a few books each month and have everybody vote on which ones you guys want to read, and then we'll have a book club meeting, like breakdown, virtual meeting at the end of every month and go over the book, and it'll be fun.
Yeah,
So,
it'll be really fun, and with it we also have a Discord channel which is on our Patreon now, and with our book club we have a book club Discord channel for you all to chat on, which is fun. And like Danielle said, we'll do polls so you can vote on what you want to read, and we'll talk about everything and go over the whole book club discussion guides and all of that good stuff.
yeah, cool. So, on to Trail Tales.
Yes,
Do you have a preference?
I would like to be told a story.
Okay. All right. So, the first story then is titled, Did We Destroy the Evidence of a Murder?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it feels
Already
serious.
already into it.
Let me start by saying thank you to both of you for all of the great content over the years. Your well researched episodes have not only entertained me, but opened up many interesting conversations between myself and my husband, and with our preteen aged son. One of our favorite episodes is the Jenny Lake Rangers episode about the lightning
Mm.
strike and rescue. We listened to that one while traveling to the Tetons in 2023, and it was a wonderful conversation starter for the family. On one recent road trip in Germany, my son and I listened to a particularly intriguing Trail Tales episode, which brought to mind a tale from way back during the dark days of my troubled adolescence. A tale that has haunted me for years. Although this story occurred in 2001, it's a tale that has resurfaced in my memory many times, especially as I consume true crime stories almost daily. It is something that has stayed in my mind as a source of intrigue and, unfortunately, maybe some guilt. After pausing the episode, I regaled my son with the story from long before his birth. When I finished, I looked at my husband, who rolled his eyes, having heard the story many times over our 23-year relationship. But when I glanced back at our son, I saw him staring at me wide eyed. After composing himself, he exclaimed, "You have to send that one in." After stewing on the notion for practically the entire 11-hour flight back to Denver, I decided to give it a go. As I've gotten older, the images this story conjure in my mind revolve less around what was destroyed, but on who destroyed it. The visions now center primarily on my friend, let's call him Mike, with his dark hair shining in the spring sun and his mischievous, deep brown eyes crinkling at the corners while he plunged a dirty butcher's knife into the sand by the river. Mike passed away in 2021 at 40, and as I write this, I realize that at just 2 weeks shy of 41, I'm now older than my friend who was 3 years older than me in life. We'll talk about Mike more later. Nestled neatly in a valley surrounded by sandstone cliffs, the town of Lyons is oh my, sorry, I have read this, I swear, but it was a while ago. I love Lyons. Have you been there? I
I
feel like
don't
we've
know.
talked about it.
I don't know if I've been to Lions. I feel like maybe I've driven through potentially, but I haven't spent any time there.
It's definitely a pass by when you're going to Rocky Mountain, so probably.
Mhm.
Oh, the last time I talked, remember I went to go look at that house? It was like a really old, it's been on the, I'm like, wow, this house is so beautiful. It's been on the house for like 4 years. What's wrong with it? And I got there, I'm like, Oh,
Oh,
that's what
that's
everything is wrong with
I
it.
do remember. Like, never mind.
Yeah, turned right around. Okay, so Town of Lyons is sheltered from the harsher weather of the plains and mountains because it's surrounded by these sandstone cliffs. When I was growing up there in the late 1990s, it was a small town geographically and socially isolated from the wider world. The gateway to nearby Rocky Mountain National Park, most visitors pass through it quickly. Growing up in this isolated hamlet, much of our recreation revolved around the foothills and mountains surrounding the small town. At the confluence of two separate branches of the St. Vrain River, it was, at least aesthetically speaking, an idyllic place to grow up. As teenagers, we gravitated towards the isolation of the South Canyon, where we searched for places to party or hike or both. We sought out small tributaries that cut into the canyon walls and allowed us access. We discovered trout swimming in tiny, isolated pools left over from the flooding, and we hiked in places likely not tread on in years. It was liberating, and it was something I finally wanted to share with my siblings. Unfortunately, we aren't very close, but to this day, hiking is one of the only things we all still have in common. On this particular day, I was hiking with two of my older brothers and one of our mutual friends, Mike. As we started at the rapidly flowing river, Mike took a couple steps back and then, without a word, ran towards the edge of a rock we were standing on. He landed easily on the other side of the river and turned back with a grin. My brothers followed suit, so I, as the little sister, had no choice but to leap. It was easier than I expected, but I remember looking back at the rock we had just jumped from and wondered how we could ever make that jump the other way coming back. I filed it away in my teenage brain for later and followed my brothers up to the dry riverbed that ran perpendicular to the river we had just crossed. After about 20 minutes of hiking, a cave materialized on the right bank of the dry creek bed. Ever the explorer, Mike ran up to it, eager to look inside. As teenagers, we weren't outfitted as hikers and nobody had a flashlight, so Mike's initial entry didn't go well. Not to be deterred, he started looking to make a torch. Poking around near the mouth of the cave, he found a bundle of what he thought were rags, which he triumphantly waved in the air, giving us all a look, one of the creepiest things I'd ever seen up to that point. A gray balaclava ski mask, the gaping maw of the mask's mouth hanging loose, with dark brown stains surrounding the faceless hole. Mike promptly wrapped the mask around the stick he was holding, and before we could protest, he lit it on fire. It burned surprisingly well, and Mike confidently entered the cave clutching his torch, only to be quickly smoked out. He emerged seconds later bearing a butcher's knife and the same cocky, shit-eating grin he wore his entire life. After examining the brown stains on the knife's handle and blade, we decided, for some unknown reason, to bring the knife with us as we turned around and headed back to the car. Nearing the river, we continued to talk about the weird shit we had just found, and before we knew it, we were staring up at the rock face we had just jumped over to cross the river, which was now looming over us on the other side. Suddenly, Mike made a declaration. Looking down at the knife, he said, "I've got to get rid of this shit." And again, before we could stop him, he plunged the knife into the loose sand with a gleam in his dark eyes. Then he turned back towards the river where we quietly contemplated how we would get back over. Of course, we joked about a murder, but that seemed impossible, right? And it seemed like just that, a joke. We hadn't just found some stash place for a murderer, or had we? To this day, I still don't know. I have looked up cold cases in Boulder County for years and wondered if any of them are connected. Would that evidence have made a difference in finding someone's killer or stopping someone who could have been responsible for more violent crimes? In 2013, catastrophic flooding ensured my continued ignorance. The town, county, and the entire region suffered severe damage. Any evidence was likely washed away, the knife broken to bits and scattered down the river, the mask long gone after Mike's torch attempt. There doesn't seem to be any way to conclusively say what we found in that cave that long ago spring day, and I guess I will never know. Should we have called the sheriff's department, whom we despised in our immature teenage way? Or should we have told our parents, who likely wouldn't have really listened to us? We didn't tell anyone, and I don't know if my brothers still remember. I'll have to ask them because it's too late to ask Mike. The last image I have from that day is leaping back over the river, which involved catching myself on a near vertical rock face on the other side of the whitewater. It was the last time I followed Mike on a hike. Anonymous.
Wow, what a story. First off, I think of, yeah, maybe you might have found something, and I can totally understand the guilt behind that. But I also think you're a kid.
Yeah.
You can't put that huge of a responsibility on yourself. Kids do things and don't understand what they're finding all the time. And who knows, it might not be linked to anything either. I mean, it's weird, a ski mask and a butcher's knife with remnants of maybe blood on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little sketchy, but I
And
don't know.
the other thing is, it was out of your control as far as what Mike was doing. Mike
Yeah, you didn't
was
do that.
doing them, so it would be one thing if you did that personally and we're like, God, I shouldn't have done that. But you are a witness to it all. And there's only so much you can do, especially as a kid, a teenager in the early 2000s. So
Yeah.
understandable, but on both fronts, because I also, we're sitting here saying, oh, don't, cut yourself some slack. But I probably would be ruminating about this as well.
Yeah. I guess the last thing that you could do if you're still really gung ho that maybe something's there, you went into a dark cave, you didn't explore it fully. There could still be something in there.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, if you are really feeling that this was something and you missed it and you made a mistake here, you could always call and just say, hey, this has been on my mind for a really long time. I don't know if it's anything, but I did find this years ago around this time. And maybe the sheriff's office would be interested. Maybe they won't be. Maybe they'll be like, I don't really care. That was years ago. But if no one's been in that cave since and it's really dark.
Yeah. And then the ball's in their court. Like, you get it off your chest. You say what you can say at this point in time, and you can offer only the information you have. And then what they do with it is now their decision. So,
yeah. And you can report things anonymously if you're not comfortable reporting it yourself too, like as a known person.
Yeah.
And if you do, write in a Trail Tales because I want to know what happens after.
We'll be watching the news out of Lions.
Yeah. Be like, what cave in Lions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for writing that in. My story is titled Trial by Fire, a Ghost Story from the Camino de Santiago. Hello, my fellow outdoor queens. I've been listening to your podcast nonstop for the last year since I discovered it while road tripping solo from Nebraska to California for a new job. Listening to The Night of the Grizzlies by firelight while camped at the Grand Canyon was a little too much for me. But I'm obsessed with the stories, laughs, and insights into history that I learned from this podcast. I just got Legacy of Luna and The Third Man Factor to read on my flight to New Zealand in September. I fly Friday the 13th just to add some spook. You just said like 3 of some of our favorite stories.
I know. I'm like, okay, tick, tick, tick. And the Jenny Lake one that this person just wrote about too.
Yeah, it's like check, check, check. All of them. Yeah. This person did want us to all know as an audience that there is a trigger warning for sexual assault. So keep that in mind. If you're going to keep listening to the story, you can always fast forward it a little bit and skip over this one. I was born in California, but I left to travel the world in search of new experiences. Despite being robbed in Oahu, I continued my journey to Bali, Australia, and New Zealand with only $3 to my name. Wow. I stayed in New Zealand.
Please share.
Must have had working or something. Yeah. I stayed in New Zealand on a work visa for just over 4 years. Fast forward to 2022, I was considering applying for New Zealand residency when I was followed home by a stranger. To my horror, the stranger broke in and attacked me while I slept. So I decided to leave. I had already reported the incident to police and they caught the perpetrator. With a trial set for September 2024, there was nothing for me to do in New Zealand until then. I felt like I needed to escape and find something to live for, and that something turned out to be cheese. Yes, cheese. Whether it was rich brie, a pungent gorgonzola, or a creamy mozzarella or burrata, I traveled to Italy to stuff my face. I spent a month drinking and eating my way through the country. In a small Irish bar, I met a Venetian who shared captivating stories of his travels around the world with me. Even though I felt a glimmer of hope in that moment, it didn't last. I roamed Italy feeling lost and defeated. The shock of the assault started to fade, and the raw feeling soon became overwhelming. I kept in touch with my new Venetian friend and confided in him about my situation. To my surprise, he suggested that I walk the Camino de Santiago. I couldn't believe it. Here I was pouring my heart out, and he simply told me to take a hike. But with nothing else to do, I agreed and asked, where should I start? I'm no stranger to having done multi-day treks into the bush hunting and camping or walking, hitchhiking across the west coast of New Zealand, mailing supplies and food packages in advance. But this Camino was basic. I was stumped by how little I needed to carry. But that worked for me because I didn't have much money after having eaten my way through my savings. I brought everything I needed and mailed everything I didn't to my friend in the US. I bought a ticket to France and left Italy within days. It didn't hit me that I was really going to walk the Camino Frances, the French way, until I started at the empty path ahead of me with no idea where to go. Just follow the signs, the Venetian had said. What was I doing following undetailed suggestions of a person that I had just met? Walking with new trail runners nonetheless. Fast forward a few days, and I find myself walking alongside an older woman. She was nearly 70 who had been walking from England and across France. She'd become my trail mom. We are crossing the Pyrenees from, sorry if I'm not pronouncing these right, they wrote the pronunciations for me, which is really nice. Roncesvalles to Zubiri. We passed through beautiful woods of the Basque Country. We walked through the small towns of Espanyol. It is here that my walking companion takes a phone call, ushering me to walk around. I walk up the hillside into a darker cluster of pines. I keep my eyes on the ground, trying my best not to trip on the mud and fallen branches. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something flitter by. I look up, curious to see what kind of bird it might be, when I see 3 female figures hanging from an outstretched tree branch. One figure on the far right side was smaller, slimmer, and looked young, like a teenager with light-colored hair. The other 2 were a bit older and had dark hair. They all wore light gray cloth dresses and scarves around their heads, holding their hair. I couldn't make out their faces as they were bent forward. I remember how they swayed gently, an invisible breeze rocking them. The older one's black shoes pointed towards the ground, and for her footing, I held that image for a good moment, frozen. I breathed out, blinking rapidly, trying to process what was before me, but it was gone. I looked down at my skin, feeling a harsh tingling as goosebumps raised. The forest didn't feel safe to begin with, but it sure as hell didn't feel safe now. I bolted up the muddy slope and pushed through the gate. It wasn't until I shut the gate did I look back in case anything was chasing me. My heart was racing. I remember my walking companion with no phone signal, and I worried for her. I felt sick to my stomach. I put my hand on my knees and tried to breathe. My friend came through the gate a few moments later, and I attacked her with questions. Did you see anything back there? Any women? People in the trees? Anything weird? People in the trees? Are you okay? No, I'm not. Did you see anyone? She shook her head. No, just you. I think I just seen ghosts. Look. I showed her my goosebumps and I told her what I had seen. We started walking over the hill and into another eerie forest. She asked, do you often see ghosts? No, I believe. Sometimes I see things, but I could just be tired. But this was clear as day, and for a good minute. I know I'm crazy, but this is real. I believe you. Some people are more sensitive. Spain has history with an Inquisition and burning witches. Maybe that's what you saw. We continued down the path through the forest. I was uncomfortable with how quiet the forest was. Even our footsteps through the damp fallen leaves barely made a sound. We got to the Burkett, another small town, and it began to pour down with rain. We kept our heads down and pushed on. The towns were empty and it disturbed me. My friend explained rural areas like this, and it was off season to be here in October, but I really felt out of place. We walked quickly out of town and onto steeper hills on our way to Zurbury. It was only when we left the town that I started to relax. I saw no more ghosts on my 790-kilometer or 491-mile trek across Spain. So a year later, and randomly, the image of those hanging ghosts come back to me while listening to a trail tale of someone being followed on the Camino. I did some research. The forest we had walked was known as the Witches' Forest. It was believed a coven was living there, or simply a mistaken group of passerby or kids from the village sneaking out at night, but regardless, they were all killed. The town of Burkett at the other end of the forest was the central location for these burnings, and left crosses in the forest to ward away witches. I had seen the crosses at several points, but at intersections where the trail crossed the road. I had assumed they were markers for those who had died in a car or other accidents. There's also a mural depicting the history in the town that I didn't see as we had rushed out because of the rain. I believe those women showed themselves to me in my darkest time of my life on purpose. While I was contemplating why me about my attack, I imagined they resonated with the pain and darkness having lived it centuries before. Now I begin my trial, looking for justice, knowing I can stand strong with the ghosts of these women who are silent but not unheard. I have a ticket booked to Portugal to walk the Camino Portugal. The Camino changed my life. Enjoy the view, but remember to watch your back and your front, as you may never know whose footsteps you're walking in. Bien Camino.
Wow. I have goosebumps, actually.
Yeah.
That was deep.
It was a really deep story, and to find it was really dark and heavy, and then to have that realization with these women that you're seeing, and it was just, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll
And
be thinking of you because it's, September now. You said September 2024, and I don't know the extent of what you went through, but as someone who has had to, I haven't talked about it a lot, but years ago, I had a stalking situation and I had to go to court and face this person, and it's not easy to do. So I think that any sort of person who is in that position is deserves some support. So we're sending it to you.
yes, absolutely.
Okay. My next story seems like it's going to be much lighter just based on the title. The title is Trail Tale. I wish I could make this up. The time we got RKO'd by a deer.
Okay.
Okay. So here we are.
I'm intrigued.
Hey, ladies, love the pod. It's the only pod I can stick with and haven't gotten bored of. I'm sure that if you decide my trail tale is podcast worthy, I won't hear it for a while. I'm playing catch up because I discovered your podcast in March of 2024 and have been binging ever since. I told myself I'm not allowed to join your Patreon until I'm fully caught up, and I'm currently on episode 130. I want to apologize for the length of my story, any profanity, and any typos. My brain goes faster than my fingers. I wanted to submit so bad, but I just thought I was boring and had no stories until I heard a trail tale in episode 90 something that made me realize my memory was overlooking the most wild experience I've ever had in a national park and a moving vehicle. My name is Jason. Jason, like a guy, but I'm a girl, from Wisconsin. I grew up camping and loving the outdoors. My dad was an Eagle Scout, so of course I learned all I know in the outdoors from him, and once they allowed females in the program, I followed suit to become one of the first female Eagle Scouts in the BSA.
Very cool.
Yeah. I enlisted at 19 years old in 2022 and got stationed in Utah with the Big Five, a dream come true. I've been with my now husband, Easton, for going on 7 years. We're high school sweethearts and have been long distance for a bigger portion of our relationship than we'd like. At the time, he was finishing his 5 years master's in Wisconsin while I'm stationed in Utah. Easton came out to Utah to visit me in May of 2023, and we decided to take advantage of our 4-day weekends. The summer consisted of Zion, Bryce, Cedar Breaks National Monument, Moki Caves, Moab Arches, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef, Colorado National Monument, and Rocky Mountain National Park, Four Corners National Monument, North Rim Grand Canyon.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, it just keeps going. I didn't get to see the Grand Canyon because the entrance was closed, so we're convinced it doesn't exist. And of course, Yellowstone. For this story, we'll be traveling to Zion. It was the last day of our Memorial Day weekend, May 29th, and we decided to take a drive through Zion since we were in the area. We both had never been, so we were really excited. When it comes to road trips, I drive. Easton has a sedan and I have a full-size truck, my baby. Note, this truck has been in my family since I was 14, and I bought it off of my dad when I moved to Utah. She's blue, and you guessed it, her name is also blue. So we made truck bed camping work. I love it and highly recommend. Anyway, we were in the middle of the park at this point going downhill, taking it slow on some switchbacks, like 15 miles an hour or so. Switchbacks are switchbacks for a reason. In this case, at Zion, it was like a ginormous rock wall to my right and a cliff to my left. We're about halfway down when the oncoming traffic going uphill slows to a damn near stop and is obnoxiously on their dash taking photos of what I thought were rock formations behind us. Nope. A literal blink later, a fucking deer falls out of the sky, bounces off of my hood of my truck, barrel rolls, and proceeds to fall God knows how many other feet down to the next ledge. Easton and I are looking at each other like, what the fuck just happened? The people taking photos drive right by us and exclaim, "Now I call that a hit and run." All I could manage was a half smile and a, huh. I couldn't stop in the middle of the road or I would be blocking the road, so we just kept driving on down in search of a pull-off amongst the cliffs. I pull off on a scenic outlook. Easton runs up to where bits and pieces of blue exploded on impact while I'm pulling out tufts of deer hair off of my cracked grill, simultaneously trying to reach my dad with one bar. Easton comes back. We assess the damage, and my poor dad, with the horrible service, I probably gave him a heart attack. Blue was still drivable, and we were left with a few big dents, a broken headlight and bulb, a cracked and displaced grill, and a ton of deer fluff. We were lucky. If we were only a few more feet forward, the deer could have been through our windshield. I was sad and disheartened because we had maybe planned on doing a hike, but at this point, I just wanted to go home. While we were on track for home being my government dorm room on base, Easton said, "I think we should check out one more spot while we're down here." And I was immediately not having it. I was bummed our trip was cut short and that blue was so broken. I was busy seeing only dollar signs and repair. Eventually, I caved and we decided to go wherever Easton had in mind. I wasn't too interested because I was overwhelmed with defeat and I knew he had just picked a place off of some random Google search. Google plans most of our trip, along with BLM campsites, by the way. Every time I asked, "Are we close?" or "Are we there?" he responded with, "I don't know, we'll see," with a smirk. Ugh, I was just still not feeling it. And I'm sick of driving. I started to see intense grade signs, and my first thought was, seriously, after what just happened to Blue? But we checked on. Of course, there were switchbacks here too. We made it to the top, and oh my, was it so worth it. No one was there. We had Cedar Breaks National Monument overlook all to ourselves. The canyons were so deep, and the very top of the land features still had snow. It was desert and alpine all in one. The oranges of the red rock and the greens of the trees made it feel like a painting. It was also windy and cold compared to the 100-degree weather we experienced at lower elevations, but I don't mind. I was taking pictures on my ancient little digital camera while Easton set up his tripod per usual for our boyfriend-girlfriend photo, so wasn't out of the norm for our trip. We had been using his tripod through Easton's visits to capture all the awesome places we had been exploring. So we pose, smile, and after standing there for a few funny seconds waiting for the pictures to be taken, he gets down on his knee. I totally thought he was joking, but quickly realized he was most certainly not. I had been teasing him for the longest time that my left hand had been feeling a little light. I melted into his arms and cried, of course, only because I was not expecting it at all. I was convinced he was waiting till we got closer to his college graduation. We hugged and kissed and enjoyed the gorgeous view, but I'd like to argue that my ring was the prettiest sight of all. It's a beautiful alexandrite gem, my birthstone, with sapphire and diamond accents, my parents' birthstones. It turns out he bought that tripod before the trip to Utah and was lugging it around all this time just so he could find the perfect moment. So now we have a video of our engagement, and you can see the exact moment I realized he just wasn't messing around. We decided, fuck it, let's do it now, adopted a puppy, and got married at a courthouse in Provo, Utah 2 months later on August 5th, 3 days before he had to fly home. It was the best way to end an unforgettable summer, and I wouldn't change a thing. I thought sharing this story close to our first anniversary would make it even more special for listeners. In conclusion, we had a very exciting day, to say the least, filled with lots of emotions, ups and downs, literally, and we all know everything happens for a reason. Side note and update, poor Blue. She's an almost 15-year-old F-150. Unfortunately, she shut the bed later that year in October with some engine issues, and we had to take her to the doctor back home in Wisconsin for repairs. She's all fixed and running great. I also got a backup cam installed, which now makes me wonder how I ever threw it in reverse without one. If you've ever been emotionally attached to a vehicle, you understand. So I'm glad she pulled through. I attached some photos of Blue, my ring, and our puppy Jasper, and some others from the engagement. Y'all are the best. Can't wait to see if I can make it on the pod. It was funny to share my story with you. Enjoy the view, but also watch your up ? Jay, Easton, and Jasper too.
That story took me
everywhere.
for a ride.
I know.
I did not like the proposal at the end was so sweet and so thoughtful. And then like the car accident was so scary and sad and
just I don't know if I really reacted appropriately when I was reading that, but just imagine being on a sheer switchback road and just a deer falling out of the sky and onto your car. Like, that's crazy.
Just like, yeah.
And I have been emotionally attached to a vehicle, my
Same.
Jeep, and I cried lots and lots of tears when I switched cars this year, a couple months ago.
Yeah. You just like you hold sentimental value. They go with you through a lot of things. And my car that I was emotionally attached to, I haven't had it in a long time, but it was a Toyota Echo. Have you seen them before?
That's not the black thing that you had when we worked at the hospital, was it?
No, I had a Honda Accord.
Okay. I'm not good with like, I can't even imagine what you're saying right now about
so that. So a Toyota Echo, I feel like you should just Google it because they're basically circles. I had a 2004 4-door black Toyota Echo. The tires are like 14-inch tires. It's super low to the ground. It is literally, as people used to make fun of my car all the time. It was a Standard, which was funny because people would come in and they just see like the circle car and they're like, oh my God, and it's a Standard. Like,
yeah.
But it was funny. I had it for a few years and then I got a driving job and I had my Echo and the clutch actually totally went while I was driving down the highway, and the only gear I had left by the time I got to a safe spot, I only had 4th gear left.
Oh gosh.
And yeah, it was, and I had a pregnant woman in the car who was training me on my job. It was just like, so I had to go buy my Accord, which you saw, which I never like loved the Accord. I got it because it was cute, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I thought it was cute. It was 2 doors. But I never actually liked that car, and I was very happy to get rid of it.
I almost said, yeah, but it was 2 doors and
it was awful. It was 2 doors.
And my Jeep was 2 doors.
Yeah.
Like
your Jeep was small, like sitting in your Jeep. It was so small getting in your Jeep.
Well, and it's funny because so it was a 2-door Jeep Wrangler, and I took everyone who's familiar with Jeeps knows there's the back seat, the like long seat in the back, and I almost immediately took it out because of the dogs. So, and then I put a net up behind, like a big cage net right behind the passenger and driver seat so that it was kind of like the dog's lair back there. Yeah. So it was essentially just 2 seats.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it was just a little box, and I loved that thing. But now that I have room, I don't know if I could go back to that.
Yeah. I test drove some Jeeps and I think that they're really cool cars, but I just remember sitting in there and the windshield was so small.
And it was like, so close to your face.
And it's so close to you. Yeah. I'm like, why do people drive like this?
And it's loud.
Same thing. I didn't test drive it because it was way out of my price range, but I looked at it on the car lot and I sat in a Bronco and same thing. Their windshields are so little and you're so close, and I'm always closer because my legs are so short. I have to put my seat like way up.
But. Oh my God. This is just so funny because I don't think I hope I have a video of it. So I'll have to look. So when I went for my grief retreat, I rented a camper van to stay in just because I stayed in the van during the retreat and gave like the rooms and stuff to the participants. So I rent this van on Outdoorsy, and it did the job. I'm not like shitting on it, but it was a 1999, like, I'm not talking nice Sprinter van type of thing you may be thinking of now. It
Yeah.
was a renovated 1999 something. I don't know exactly what it was, but
Okay.
it did the job and stuff. But the seat, I couldn't get close enough to the pedals, and which, you know, in older cars you have to really like crank on the pedals for them to go
Yeah.
anywhere. So not only did I had to put the pillows from the back of the
To
bed,
like push you
yes,
forward
to
so you
push
could
me forward
actually reach.
and to sit on top of so I could see above the steering wheel. So I had a pillow behind me, a pillow under. I had like a car seat. I made a car seat for myself. And I'm driving this wicked old thing. And it's just like the alignment was really off. I'm like, am I even going to make it? Because I had to drive
Yeah.
3.5 hours from Denver to the sand dunes. And all I could think of, my mom's going to laugh, but my aunt Nita, who I got my first car from, she was super small and she had to do the same thing with pillows. So all I could
Yeah.
think about was my gray aunt Nita. I'm like, oh my God,
Doing
is
the
this what
same
it's
thing.
like? Yeah. But anyways, yeah, being 5, whatever. You're 5'2".
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, I have a Toyota Tacoma, and one of the first things I did when I bought it is I could barely see over the steering wheel. So the first thing I did was I bought a mod for the seat to lift it up. So
yep.
now I'm over the steering wheel, and it was actually the best thing I could have done because I remember I test drove it and I was like, I couldn't see over the steering wheel that well, but I also couldn't see over the hood of the car that well, especially on both sides of it. So I'm like, when I'm taking corners, I'm not going to be able to see if I'm close to something, if I'm going to hit it or not. And this is not great.
Yeah.
And I put these little risers on my seat, and now I sit like an inch and a half higher or something. And I could have even gone higher, but I was like, oh no, this is good. And
As long as you
now
can
I'm
see.
comfortable. Yeah, no, it's great
Yeah.
now. Before I couldn't, but
Which is a problem when you're trying to drive. But anyway, okay,
yeah,
enough about cars.
yeah, we all have our sentimental cars, I think. But
Yep.
okay. My next story is titled Another One for Dog Lovers. Hey, ladies, my name is Colette, and I am a longtime listener. First time tale teller. When Spotify released my year in review last year, I was surprised, yet not at all surprised, that I was in the 0.01% of listeners by binge listening to all of your episodes, some twice over the course of the summer and fall. That is about 3 years of shows in 2 months. I took y'all along on so many of my adventures that I feel as if you were there with me. The knowledge I've gained from your archive of shows has empowered me and infused itself on my trips and conversations. I'm so glad you've both found your calling in creating the show. As long as you're sharing, I'll be listening. It has inspired me to share as well. So I've written this story up about a recent July 2024 adventure. Here we go. Well, thank you. That's very kind. Many of us have a park that feels like a home away from home. New River Gorge National Park and Preserve in West Virginia holds that title for me. It is halfway between my birthplace of Cleveland, Ohio, and my current home of Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a few good stories that harken back to my time spent here across the years. In even more memorable ways, I hold on to many descriptive little vignettes from this park that dance through my mind, drawing upon the memories when I need a moment of joy. I believe these are called glimmers. Not enough for a trail tale, but enough for a poetic memory. I guess you just have to experience for yourself to know what I mean. Every summer, I spend a week in Cleveland with my family. I pack up my car and make the drive north on Route 77. Along the route, the magic of New River Gorge is not far. I look forward to splitting up the drive by camping, usually solo, before continuing my journey. This summer, I had a special exception. I camped on the first drive, and my partner, Austin, was able to fly into Cleveland and make the return trip with me, planning to stop again in New River Gorge. The hikes there are incredible, and we continually find new places to call our favorite. We decided to go to the Grandview Sandbar and hike up to the Grandview Overlook by the Little Laurel Trail. The park website describes this as a strenuous 2-mile point-to-point hike with 1,400 feet of elevation gain. We decided to start at the bottom and ascend, though some folks start at the top and stop at the bottom to play in the New River. The trailhead at the bottom is unassuming. You might even think you're trespassing. It is described as an unmarked gate that you sidestep to begin. I've never met a trail I didn't think was beautiful, and this was no exception. Rhododendron is the West Virginia state flower, and even when not in full bloom, the laurel bushes create steep walls that are impressive in their height and depth. There are more moments of mountain views from one side to the river to the other, as well as quintessentially Appalachian wood gorges that are nostalgic to me. We oohed and awed as we hiked together. We only passed by one other group, a couple and their 2 dogs, both of which were notably cute as fuck. My partner, or AF, sorry.
I swore a lot. Hey, if you write swears,
we're reading them.
We're reading them. So I have been trying to tone it down. It's probably not working, but I've been trying.
You're doing a great job.
I've been trying to tone down my swearing because people like to be mean and tell me to stop swearing.
They're like, stop fucking swearing.
Yeah, literally. I'm like, okay. God.
Anyway, my partner and I are not only animal lovers, but in the midst of talking of adopting our first pet together. So we take every opportunity to know all the adorable floofs and chonks whenever we see them. We waved and said hello as we passed by, basked in the sweet doggo presence, and carried on. We made it to the top, took in the views, and spent a lot of time doing other trails while also desperately seeking more water to aid in the descent back to the car on the humid July day. After over an hour hanging out on Grand View Overlook and surrounding altitude, we made our way to the trailhead for the descent before continuing to drive back to Raleigh. My partner even said, "It is actually all downhill from here," meaning we put in the work and now we can coast down. After a hot day and refilled water bottles, that was a pleasant thought. Soon after he said that, we saw the half of the group at the upper trailhead. Odd, we thought. 1 human and 1 dog. We were surprised to see them at all, given we spent so much time at the top, but thought perhaps they'd taken the dogs for a relaxing river cool down. "Hey, how was your hike?" my kind and friendly boyfriend asked. "Well," began the woman. She proceeded to tell us that Finn, their white lab, was suffering from a heat stroke and could not be moved. We read the panic on her face. Her husband remained with him while she continued onward to find help. They had called the visitor center and were told that they cannot help dogs. Frustrated and impassioned, we asked questions and began to help devise a plan. Surely someone could help rescue Finn safely, and we were going to find a way. We advised her to call a larger resource office in the park. There are 4 visitor centers in the park. Grand View is one of the smallest. But if by chance they couldn't, we would do something. We estimated him at about 85 pounds, but when she said they tried to carry him together but couldn't, we found out that that was more like 115 pounds. She went onward and we descended, hoping to find Finn quickly. She had stated that they were about 3/4 of a mile back. Not too far, we thought. But with each step of decline, we were reminded of the steep elevation gain we had hiked earlier. During this realization, my sweet boyfriend was considering how he could be useful. As a former D1 heavyweight wrestler, he knew that if push came to shove, he could try to carry Finn over his shoulders to safety. He had carried guys his size up and down stadium steps in the past weekly workout. We even joked that all his wrestling experience was ultimately just preparation to save Finn. As we continued, we realized that even with his strength and experience, it would be a huge challenge. We grew quiet as we wondered what would happen and about Finn's state of well-being. About a mile down, we spotted them, hanging out on the trail. Finn laying down, but alert and smiling, which we were relieved to see. We shared some of our water, but Finn could not keep it down. Even though his temperament seemed well, it was clear the situation was dire and no convincing could make that pup carry on. Cell service is spotty in this area, generally, and this trail was no different. We asked if the man had heard from his wife, and he told us that he had no service. I checked my phone, and nothing either. Lastly, Austin checked his, and despite not having any bars nearly the entire trip, right here in the middle of Little Laurel Trail, on the side of the mountain in West Virginia, he had some. We connected with the wife, and she had found help. It might take a little while, but an ATV would be on its way to retrieve the man and his dog. There was a small shift in the way we were all feeling, one towards ease. No question about it, we stayed until the ATV arrived. We continued to provide care and comfort as best as 2 strangers can spontaneously do on a trail. To help move along for both Finn and his human, we talked, we got to know each other, and gave some pets the words of encouragement in our puppy voices, you know the one. We found out coincidentally that the husband and wife met in Cleveland, and one of their daughters happened to work in Raleigh as the bar manager of a cool mezcal bar nearby to our house that we occasionally visit. Small world type of things. The ATV rumble was music to our ears, and Finn's too, as he perked up at the sight of what he must have sensed as help. Austin lifted Finn into the ATV. We shook hands and said our goodbyes. Austin and I had finished our hike talking of nothing but what all had just transpired and the amazing connectivity of hiking specifically in a way that can bring strangers together. We checked in, having exchanged numbers, to find that Finn was doing well. He got the help and rest that he needed. It almost couldn't end any better than that. But to really bring the connection full circle, we made our way over to the little mezcal bar to meet the daughter of the couple and Finn's human sibling to tell the story of Finn's big adventure from our perspective. Enjoy the view. You might need to rescue a dog on your way back.
Wow. Heat stroke is no joke in
No.
humans or dogs. I just remember at the animal hospital, we would get faxes. What part of our job opening would be to look at the fax machine. That sounds so dated. Or emails. I guess maybe we switched to emails, but truly, yeah, the fax from nearby emergency vets about patients of ours. If any of our patients were seen at an emergency clinic, they would fax the notes to us. And every summer, we always had heat stroke patients, and a lot of them didn't make it. A lot of the brachycephalic dogs, like bulldogs and pugs.
You have to be extra careful.
Yeah, you have to be really extra careful. But it can happen to any dog and any type of emergency. This story reminded me of a piece of equipment that is helpful for owners of dogs that are bigger, like Finn is. There's a company that they make several different types of like gear, harnesses, straps thing. It's called PhytoPro, and they're hiking things for dogs. So if something happens like heat stroke, or your dog is now immobile from some sort of injury or sudden illness and you physically cannot move them, you can strap them up in this harness that makes it easy for you to carry, quote unquote easy, doable for you to carry them to help.
On your back.
Yeah, on your back. Yeah. Or and like I said, there's a couple of different versions of whatever you're looking for, but it's helpful for, I mean, even Chaska, I think about that all the time. He's only 52 pounds, but if it was just me and him and he physically couldn't move, I would need something like that.
Yeah, I have to be really careful. Our older dog, Tucker, he's over 100 pounds, and he's 9 now, and he's just he's in his cozy era, and summer is really hard on him. He's all black. So I have like a hard and fast rule with him that anything over 55 degrees, we don't go on hikes, because he'll start taking breaks and he gets hot. And I just think, if he ever couldn't move any further, then
how are you supposed to?
How would I carry him? He's the same size as me, and there's just no way. And I mean, we'll do other things. We'll go on we'll go on walks and we'll run around in the woods, and he's got a big yard and stuff, but we're not going to go on a 3-mile hike. Anything I would say. So we don't go on hikes if it's over 55 degrees. The longest we'll go will be like half a mile.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I mean, we used to do more than that, but wintertime, he's great. Wintertime, he thrives. Yeah. September, it's getting cooler. He's already like rearing to go. He's like, hey, it's cooler out. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But it's scary. And it's, when it's really hot out, you just have to be really cognizant of your dogs. And also, I think a good tip, if your dog's not keeping down water and you can't keep them hydrated, another really important thing is to get their body temperature lowered. And part of how you can do that is through their paws. Mm-hmm. Ideally, if you could soak them totally, you don't want to cause shock to their body either.
Yeah, so you don't want to drop their temperature too fast and too suddenly.
But their paws are a good way to, if you have like ice water on you or anything, if you can soak their paws. Mm-hmm. if they're not drinking and won't, just temporarily. But yeah, you don't want to shock their bodies either. So
Yeah.
don't put them
Well,
in an ice bath. But
yeah, I guess moving into the fall, maybe it's not as relevant, but I mean, heat
no,
stroke can
people in the
happen. So,
desert and stuff, it's
yeah,
still hot there.
it's true. It's true. Yeah. So look out for your dogs. It's especially more difficult, because dogs will just go, go, go until they literally can't anymore. It's not like people where it's like, oh, I'm not like suddenly feeling great. Dogs will just keep
Yeah.
going.
Well, especially they
So
follow their owners too. So you have to be really, they might seem like they're doing okay, but you got to reel it
adjust.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to adjust. I mean, Tucker's old, Chaska is old. He's actually right next to me right now. He usually doesn't
Aw.
come up here for recordings, but he's here today and he's sleeping. And yeah,
He really wanted to hear this Trail Tales.
he did. He wanted to be present for it. Okay, so my last story is titled Everything is Not Okay, but It's Okay. Enjoy Your Hike. Hello, Cassie and Danielle. I've been listening to your podcast for a couple of years now, and I thought I would share a trail tale of my own that goes along with the Third Man Factor episode. Danielle, I also lost the love of my life 21 years ago. He is still a hard one to replace. I'm sad I lost him, but so very thankful that I knew him. I am who I am because of him. Sorry. Wow. That came out of nowhere. And sorry. Wow. Got me. The night he passed away, his mom and I were trying to sleep in my fiance and I's bed. I was sobbing and listening to our song on repeat when all of a sudden I had this calm feeling come over me and a sense that everything was going to be okay. After that, I was able to actually fall asleep, and I know he is always with me. On to the actual tale. Okay, just had to.
All right, thank you.
Oh my God.
Let's get through this.
Okay.
And we're on video now.
I forgot about that for 1 second. Okay.
It's okay.
On to the actual trail tale. In 2013, two friends and I were backpacking in the Sawtooth Mountains National Forest in Idaho. It was something close to 70 miles. We didn't have a set itinerary, so we had many days to get that trail done, and we would decide on the trail how many miles per day we would hike. I'm the one in the group that wants to smell the roses and not rush the trip. Before the trip, as my mom was taking me to the airport, I confessed to her that I wasn't as excited about this trip as I normally would be because I had this feeling that something bad was going to happen while I was gone. She reassured me that everyone was fine and that they would be until I got home a week later. I'm usually really good about leaving her an itinerary of where I'm going to be, including which trails I will be on and the dates. As she dropped me off, she reminded me that I hadn't done that yet. I promised her I would text her after I checked in for the flight. I probably texted her something like Sawtooth Mountains Grand Jean Trailhead Loop. Fast forward through the uneventful flights and meeting up with my friends to drive to the trailhead, the three of us excitedly started our hike that evening. On the second night, while sleeping, I had this odd sense come over me. It was like my mom was speaking to me from above. She said, "Destiny, everything is not okay, but it's okay. Enjoy your hike." I never mentioned this feeling to either of my friends. They would probably think I was crazy, or maybe not, because one of them had already experienced another one of my premonitions on another trip. That is going to be another tale, though. We ended up doing the trail a lot faster than we thought we would, probably in part to me wanting to get out of there so I could call home. For 3 days, we took in the views, the eerie sunsets due to the forest fires in the area, the meteor shower, and talking to some other hikers we met from that same area we are from. It was obvious that we were going to finish the trail early, so we discussed what we were going to do with our extra days before we had to catch our flights back home. Driving to the Oregon coast was what we all decided on. I had yet to see the Pacific coast. I would have been super excited about it, except I just knew I would not be going to the coast. All the while, I'm pretending like I was okay, but inside, I'm thinking about what could be going on at home. Since it was my mom I heard, I thought maybe something was wrong with her. Like I didn't feel like she was dead, but it just seemed like maybe she was really sick or something. I had all kinds of scenarios going on in my head. To ease my mind, I envisioned her to be at the hospital where I worked, and that all of my coworkers were doing the best they could to keep her alive until I was back home. On our last night on the trail, one of my friends and I were having a typical talk about what the first thing we wanted to do when we got back to civilization was. I finally told her that I just wanted to get into cell service to call home because I felt like something was very wrong. The next day, we packed up our gear for the last 5 miles to finish out the loop. As we finished the loop and returned to the trailhead where we started the trip just a few days before, our spirits were high. We felt like we killed that trail, and we even had 3 extra days to do some other adventuring. Across from the trailhead, the camp hostess was checking the area, and we asked if she could take a picture of us. She said, sure, and as she was walking towards us, she asked, "Are any of you Destiny?" My heart just sank. I don't even think we took that picture. I hesitantly said, yes, I was, and she responded that they had been looking for me for the past 5 days. They had sent out notes in with other backpackers that started the trail after us, and even some rangers had hiked up the trail looking for me. I told her that we had been hiking pretty fast, so that's probably why no one caught up to us. If someone would have given me one of the notes while I was miles away from a phone, I don't know how I would have dealt with it. She said it had been a very busy week looking for me, as well as a kidnapper who was thought to have been in the area. He was there, and they caught him. And, of course, the forest fires in the area as well. The note said, "Call home, Kathy." My mom. I knew then that my mom was okay, but then who wasn't? She had called the Idaho State Police to see if they could get a message to me. Thankfully, she reminded me to tell her where I was going to be. She knew that the guy with me had driven his car out and would have Kentucky plates. They had left a note on his car too, just in case no one saw us when we got back to the trailhead. The camp hostess gave me one of her personal calling cards so that I could use a payphone at a nearby lodge to call back home. My mom answered, and as soon as she heard my voice, she started to break down. My 6-week-old nephew had passed away of sudden infant death 2 days after I had left. She was worried I wouldn't be able to get home in time for his funeral, which was in another 2 days. My friends and I left the area heading back to Boise and cell service so I could change my flight and get a hotel. One of the hardest nights to be away from my family. I did make it home in time to say farewell to my forever baby of a nephew. To end on a lighter note, at the hotel that night, I was doing laundry to pass the time, and I talked to a woman firefighter. I told her why I was out there, and she said, "You just hiked 70 miles? Your feet don't show it." I replied, "Sure they do. I can already tell that I'm going to lose this toenail." Sorry for the long story, but thanks for reading. Enjoy the view, and I know I always have someone watching my back. Thanks for what you guys do, Destiny. Premonitions. You got to listen to them. That's all I got to say.
It's hard to know, though. It's hard to decipher what is anxiety and what is a premonition.
Well, at first,
No.
when I was reading that, I was thinking kind of the same thing. As far as relating to that feeling, I have struggled a lot with, the amount of trips that we do for a couple of reasons, but at the base layer of that, it's anxiety of something happening when I'm away. And that's
Mhm.
because of, just the sudden, everything. My dad suddenly passed away, Ian passed away suddenly, Blue passed away suddenly, and thankfully I was there for 2 of the 3 of those things, but it could have easily happened when we were away.
Yeah.
And I just have a really hard time with that now, of being like, something bad is going to happen, something bad is going to happen. But that's, I think, a lot to do with just the recent, relatively recent
Like, that feels more
events.
like anxiety.
That feels like anxiety, and I know that I'm feeling that because of the things that have happened to me in recent years. I
Mhm.
mean, my dad was 14 years ago at this point. But, Destiny was explaining that she lost her fiancé 21
Mhm.
years before, so I'm like, maybe that's not it, and, that's not the anxiety that I feel, but I don't know,
Yeah.
who knows? So, that's kind of my first thought, but then I was like, I don't know, she explained that she does this a lot, and I don't know. I don't get the feeling that this type of feeling happens to her
Often.
often. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so hard because just, like, knowing the difference, and then if you do have these really strong feelings, it's like you don't know if it's real. You don't know what
I
to
know.
do about it. You don't know what's going to happen. And then to have something like that happen is devastating. I mean, SIDS is such a scary thing for people. And I know a few people who have had kids with SIDS, and it's just, it's heartbreaking. So
Yeah, it is kind of like, yeah, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? Where do you place it? What actions do you take, especially if you don't 100% trust it?
yeah. And also if you are someone who believes that like fate or things are already written, things
Yeah,
are going to happen, like what do you do in that? Like it's already, if you believe that things already are set to happen, then what exactly are
right.
you going to do?
Yeah, it's tricky, but I saw
Yeah.
this thing. It's like, if it's not exactly aligned with this, but it said, if your body says no, it's a no, and you can unpack the details later. And I really loved that because
Yeah.
it's so true. Like, your body knows before your mind does, and your mind can decipher those details later. But in a lot of circumstances, you just got to go with your gut, and
Mhm.
because it rarely leads you astray.
It's true.
All right, you have one more for us?
Yes, I have one more.
Okay.
Mine is titled River People from Kentucky Love Their Bigfoot.
Okay. Thank God we're on. It feels like a upswing. I don't know.
um, they'll see. I actually have two stories, but the first really starts with my grandfather. He was born in the mid 1930s. His mother died when he was only a few months old, and his father, like many men of the time, was not equipped to take care of a small child, especially when dealing with the grief of his beloved wife. He grew up being raised by various family members and at a young age took up work along riverboats going up and down the Ohio River. He had no formal education to speak of, but he had a passion for knowledge and learning. He loved the river and spent most of his later life painting steamboats going to and from the Ohio River between Kentucky and Indiana. He was also an inventor. He created and submitted several patents for things including a combustible engine. He was an incredible person that had a mind like no other. He died when I was 8, but I have memories of sitting on his lap before I was even school age, listening to him explain deep concepts about space and time and teaching me basic algebra. All of this is just to paint a picture of what a passionate, intelligent man he was. But one of his greatest passions was for Bigfoot. I can remember me and my cousins all circled around him listening to tales of his time on the river and his encounters with the infamous wild hairy man. Whether these stories were true or products of his vivid imagination to delight his grandchildren, I do not know. But they are cherished memories. Years before YouTube was a thing and you had to Google to easily look up articles on sightings and theories, my grandfather had collected so many different Bigfoot resources and shown them all to us. I grew up watching and rewatching The Legend of the Boggy Creek and the Patterson Gimlin film. We were a family of believers. I'm dating myself a bit here, but well before seatbelt laws were a thing, my parents and my aunts and uncles would load me and my cousins into the back of the truck and on late summer nights take us driving down the spooky roads in my hometown. My grandpa always said when looking for a Bigfoot, he always follows the creek. One night, when I was around 7, the moon was out and so bright, and I was in the back of the truck with my mother, my aunt, my sister, and my 3 cousins. My mom and my aunt had inherited my grandfather's love for storytelling, and we would sit in the back of the truck being entertained while they tried to delight and horrify us. On this particular night, it was so bright and all the countryside was illuminated with silvery moonlight. My aunt alerted my dad, who was driving, that she needed to pee. So he pulled over and unceremoniously got out of the truck and waded off into a cornfield out of view to relieve herself. On the opposite side of the road, several hundred feet away, but within a clear view, was a large white barn lit up by moonlight. I can remember it so clearly. But suddenly, a large, dark figure emerged and walked right in front of it. It was tall and appeared hairy. It was way taller than the barn door. For some reason, maybe fear, I did not say anything to anyone. I just watched this figure as it made its way past us. For many years, I told no one of this experience. Doubt crept in as I got older. Maybe it was a silhouette, a shadow being cast on the barn, and that's why it appeared so large. But my mind kept going to the fact the night was so bright and you could clearly see everything in that field. If it was a man casting a shadow, I would have seen him. No, this was a large figure walking directly in front of the barn. Years later, around a campfire with my same cousins who grew up on tales of Bigfoot with me, we're talking about our favorite cryptid and doing our best imitations of the famous swing of the arms in the Patterson Gimlin film. For whatever reason, I decided as a grown woman to share my story of what I believe to be a Bigfoot sighting. After I told my tale to my cousins, they went silent. My sister spoke up. I remember that. I saw that too. Another one of my cousins chimed in. Me too. For whatever reason, we had all seen the same thing and yet had remained silent. After hearing their versions of that night, I am even more convinced that what I saw was Bigfoot. The area this happened in is rural, but not exactly isolated. But as Grandpa always said, he always follows the creek. And we just happened to be on Corn Creek Road. Now that I'm an adult and I live across the river in Indiana and can in fact look out and see Kentucky and the roads where we spent so much time huddled in the back of my uncle's truck. The town I live in is one of the largest historical districts in the country, with nearly all the downtown area being claimed as historic. There is a bridge that crosses the river into Kentucky, and in the evenings, I like to walk it. It's always pleasant as you're walking back to Indiana to see this lovely little river town nestled against the hill. Last December, I had went out walking a little later than normal, and my sister again was with me. The trees on the hill were bare, and you could distinctly see headlights of the car going up and down the hill between their spindly branches. It was dark, not very late, probably 8:30, but being in the middle of December, it was very dark out. As we were walking back in, looking at the hill in the town, I happened to notice that above the hill, above the traffic, that there are 6 circular lights hovering in a perfect line above the treetops. They look like blowing fireballs. These were definitely not headlights. I tried to get my sister's attention, but apparently my pointing skills are not up to par, and she kept looking to the far left. Finally, she saw it, but just as each light one by one blinked out of existence. I do not believe in aliens per se, which is probably weird for a Bigfoot supporter. But I do believe that there are more things in the world that are way beyond our comprehension. I do not know what those lights are, but I did feel like I was in the middle of an Unsolved Mysteries episode. There is an old military providing grounds outside of town that I live in. I don't believe it's active, so I'm not sure if what I saw could be ascribed to some military operation or it's just some natural phenomena. It was unlike anything I've ever seen before and more than a few miles from my Bigfoot encounter. Anyway, love the podcast. It just reminded me so much of growing up and listening to all the stories from my grandpa, my mom, and my aunt. Keep up the good work.
I love the UFO surprise twist at the end.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
You never know. I believe in UFOs. I believe in aliens. So,
yep.
Maybe.
I mean, I don't think you have to be, just because you're a Bigfoot believer, you don't have to be an alien believer and vice versa.
Yeah. Totally.
I am totally both, but if I had to choose, which no one has ever asked me this, but I'm going to say it. If they're like, only one is real, you can only believe in one of the two, I would say alien for sure.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I don't know, like for Bigfoot, I believe that there is a type of Bigfoot that exists. I just don't know if I believe it's what society is portraying it as.
I'm of the belief that there certainly was some sort of Bigfoot creature. I mean, just based on the sheer amount of different cultures and who have written and spoken about this creature for so many centuries and all across the world and time. If it exists still, I don't know. I'm going to say maybe. But there's have you heard of the belief that I'm not trying to laugh because I don't know enough about it to make it form an opinion, but there's a lot of people who believe that Bigfoot is like an interdimensional being.
I have heard that before. And that's why we only see it periodically, because it's coming from another realm or dimension.
Which is interesting because is that also grouped with like fairies and a lot of other things that people see. You know what I mean? Like it
Well,
can't
I
just
know,
be Bigfoot that's coming and going. There's got to be other.
Yeah. Well, I know in Lake Champlain, Nessie, that's there. There's that same theory that it's an interdimensional thing. And there's even diagrams of it underwater, like swimming into another dimension. And that's why we only see it like, that's why we've have like that one photo of it, but it like goes off into another dimension. And there's like a theory that there's this like door to another realm,
Portal.
like under, a portal in Lake Champlain somewhere.
Okay. See, I don't know if I can get, which is strange because I believe in other dimensions and I believe in like overlapping timelines and realities and whole quantum thing. Like I'm very on board with that. But to say that the reason we don't have physical proof of these different things is because they're interdimensional beings seems kind of like just a
far-fetched
excuse. It's like, oh yeah, duh, that's why we don't have. I don't know. Whatever. I'm not trying to like discredit my own.
And we don't know. We're just two people talking about it. Who knows?
I wish to be proved. I just hope something comes soon of like with all the cameras and all the everybody having like a phone in their pocket. Let's get some hard proof.
Yeah.
It's a dream. Okay. Well, that's it. We're done.
Except if you are on our Patreon, because if you are on Patreon, we have 2 more stories.
Or also, Apple subscription.
Or Apple subscriptions. Yeah. Yes. If you're an Apple subscriber or you're on Patreon, we have 2 more stories to read for you today. Also, as a side note, if you are interested in joining our Patreon, we just did a big revamp of it. So we have ad-free, we have bonus stories, we have bonus content like these 2 stories that are coming up. We have a Discord server that you can have access to. We have some exclusive merch that is offered on there. We have a book club that we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. We do live streams monthly with everyone. So we have a lot of really cool stuff on there.
Should we announce what we're doing for our live stream?
Not yet.
Okay. So each month we're doing something different for our live stream. This last month was September was trivia. And so each month we're going to do something different. And we're just in the talks of what we're doing for October.
But it's spooky themed.
And it's fun. So, okay, great. Well, let's do our 2 other stories for everyone. And everybody else, we'll see you next time. In the meantime, enjoy the view.
But watch your back.
Thank you so much for joining us again this week. If you have a trail tale or story suggestion, send us an email at stories@npadpodcast.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at National Park After Dark and on Twitter at NPAD Podcast. Join our Outsiders Only community on Patreon or Apple subscriptions to listen ad-free, unlock monthly bonus episodes, and exclusive content.
And remember, when you support our sponsors, you are supporting our show. For our exclusive discount codes and source information from today's episode, check out the show notes. For more information on our show, our book recommendations, merch updates, and more, visit our website at npadpodcast.com. And please rate, review, and subscribe from wherever you listen to podcasts.